Today is the 16th of October 2010. We're at the Hotel Thayer at West Point. My name is Wayne Clark. I'm with the New York State Military Museum, and my assistant is Mr. Mark Merritt. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and your date and place of birth, please?
James Bangert. I was born in New York City, Riverdale, New York City, on June the 25th, 1924.
Did you attend school there?
Yes, I did. I went to parochial school, and then I went to Manhattan College Prep, and then I went to Manhattan College for 6 months.
And what year did you graduate from high school?
43.
Do you
No, not 43. Yeah, it was 43. I'm sorry.
43, all right.
Yeah, right.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor and what your
Yeah, I was
reaction
home. It was Sunday afternoon. We had the radio on. I forgot what we were doing, but never knew what Pearl Harbor, where it was, what it was, and very surprised to hear about it, and shocked, in fact.
Now, did your life change at that point?
Not really. I guess I was only about 16, I think, at the time.
But did your family experience shortages or rationing?
Oh yeah, during the war, I know it was hard to get food, hard to get butter. The fuel was rationed, gasoline. When I graduated from high school, it was in 43. And I guess I get my dates right. But anyway, we wanted to go on vacation. Couldn't get any gas. We went up to the Adirondacks, and my dad, we took the boat ride up to Albany. My dad rented a taxi up to Schooner Lake, and that's where I registered for the draft.
Oh.
I was just 18 at that time.
Now, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted, yes, I was drafted.
And you ended up in the Army Air Corps. How did that happen?
Well, just by coincidence, I was drafted into the Army, and we were on the train down to Fort Dix, and all of a sudden, an officer walked through the train, and he had an Air Corps patch on, and all the fellows in the plane and the train started to cheer, and I didn't know what they were cheering about. And then finally I realized in the Air Force, and it didn't matter to me what. The only thing different mattered when we went through induction, they were going to put me in the Navy, and for some reason I didn't want to be in the Navy, and I can't explain why. I just didn't like the uniform. I think. And I was 16. What do they know?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I was complaining, and the officer, who was a dentist, was examining my teeth. And he heard me complaining. He says, "You don't want to be in the Navy? Well, your teeth are bad. You're going to go in the Army." And that's how I got in the Army.
And did you go to Fort Dix for your basic training?
Yes. And then from there we went down to Miami Beach. Took our basic training down to Miami Beach. And then I was going to be not an engineer, a ground crew. Trained to be a mechanic down at Gulfport. And my older brother, who was 6 years older than I was, he had gone in a year before Pearl Harbor. He could see the war was going to come, and he decided to volunteer. And he was an officer by the time I got in. He was in the Air Force. And
was he a pilot?
No, he washed out. First he was in the Army and trained. He was in the Armor Division, and decided he wanted to get in the Air Force, Air Corps. And he ended up he washed out of pilot school, but he got into Bombardier school, became a Bombardier. Talked me into. He said, "As long as you're going to fly, why don't you become an officer, get in the Air Corps, and train to be a Bombardier or a pilot." And I didn't make it to pilot, and I didn't make it to navigator. I made it a Bombardier.
Now, did you go to flight training at all? Or
No, I didn't, no.
you just-
Right to Bombardier School.
You went right to
After I
Bombardier
went-
School?
Well, I trained to be I almost became finished a course in mechanics in ground crew, and down at Gulfport. And but then just before graduation, they picked me up for the
Bombardier School?
Bombardier School, right.
And
Well, yeah.
where did you go for that Bombardier School?
Well, first we went down to San Antonio, where they decide you went through a series of tests, decide whether you're going to be a pilot, a navigator, or a bombardier. And I was assigned to be a bombardier from there. Then I went to Childress in Texas,
Okay.
Childress Air Force Base for bombardier training.
How long was that training for?
How long it was? I guess it was about 4 or 5 months.
And it says you were injured?
Well, yeah, in bombardier training, we had to load our own bombs, 100-pound bombs, usually 2 of us, and I happened to cut my wrist on the tail of them. They were cheap bombs, they're disposable bombs.
They were just training bombs?
Training bombs, and they had very crude tails on them. They were I didn't know that, but they were very sharp. For some reason, I caught my wrist on the tail, and the officer on the plane said, "Somebody's bleeding here." And I looked down, and yeah, sure enough, I was bleeding. So I had to go to the hospital. They had to operate on my wrist.
Oh.
And I still can't move my pinky to full extent.
Really? Now, when did you graduate from Bombardier School?
In 44, I guess in 44, in August, I think it was, July or August of 44.
And where did they...
Then I went to Tampa, Florida,
Uh-huh.
picked up a crew down there, trained with that crew till about, I guess, November, December. That crew, my original crew left for England, and I was left behind. I don't know why. I picked up a new crew and retrained on that new crew. For some reason, they had too many bombardiers.
Uh-huh.
I found that out later on. I didn't fly every mission with my crew, even overseas. And,
So when did you go overseas?
February of 44. February 45.
February of 45.
It was late. It was pretty late. It was almost at the end of the war.
Now, did you fly over?
Yeah, we flew over with the same trip that he took to Bangor, Maine. Well, left from Hunter Field in Georgia and flew into Bangor. There was a blizzard in New England at the time. We were able to fly. We were supposed to go on another field, but we ended up in Bangor. Then on to Greenland, Labrador, Greenland, Iceland, and then into Scotland.
Now, did you drop that plane off there? And
Yeah, we left the plane behind. In fact, when we left, the plane was still there. We saw that it never saw combat.
Really?
Yeah, that plane was still there.
So you ended up going to England?
England, and then actually we landed in Wales.
Right.
And then then they took us to England
And told you were going to be with the 8th Air Force.
the 8th Air Force, right.
Now, what unit did they put you in?
The 452nd in Doephan Green up near Attleboro.
Had you heard about the 8th Air Force before?
Not really.
No.
I heard about the 9th because my brother was flying in the 9th.
Ah.
He was in the invasion, actually.
Now, once you got assigned to the 8th Air Force, did you have one plane that you flew on most of the time?
No, the plane we flew over was never used. As I said, it was left there, and we didn't fly the same plane every day, every time. I didn't fly with the crew all the time. Sometimes I flew with different crews.
What was your first mission like?
Well, the crew, my first crew, I didn't go on their mission. They were seriously damaged. Their plane burned up on the runway, and luckily they all got out of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
One guy jumped out of the back, and he got serious as they were running down the runway. He was seriously injured, and he ended up in the hospital. Then the second mission that the crew flew, I went with them, and we went deep into Germany, south of Berlin, on the border of, I guess, Czechoslovakia and Germany. And that's where we hit with the jets, twin-engine German jets. Came right through the row. Our number 3 engine was, the propeller was damaged. It was bent. I had to feather that engine. Yeah. So we got infected. They couldn't find the target. We were targetleers. We didn't even zero in on the target.
They just told you when to drop the bombs and you let them go.
The bombs, in fact, it got even easier than that. It was all automatic. As soon as the lead plane dropped his planes, our plane dropped the bombs. All we had to do was open up the bomb bays, put a switch on, and it was all radio controlled. Mm-hmm. So all planes went out, all the bombs went out about the same time. And we didn't have individual targeting on them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but your plane was...
Oh, the plane was damaged, so we went on to the second target. In fact, our bomb bay doors weren't open. We had to crank them down. They wouldn't open up automatically. So we had to crank them down. It was a very confusing mission with the jets coming through. So one plane was shot down, his tail disintegrated, and they spiraled it down. And I didn't see anybody get out of the plane, but I guess they did. I don't know.
And that was just basically
that
your
was my first mission.
mission.
Yeah, that was kind of scary.
Yeah. Now, how many missions did you fly all together?
Well, actually, 7 combat missions, and the last 3 missions were dropping food to the Dutch, just as that gentleman did. They were starving. The Germans had them trapped. They couldn't get any food into Holland, and through the Red Cross, they had a truce. We flew into Holland at a very low altitude, something like 300 feet. We were just off the ground. And the bomb bays were loaded with canned foods, bags of flour, and on plywood platforms. And we opened the bomb bays, and those platforms then were released, and everything went out all at one time. Into a racetrack. There was 2 other drops. I think there were 4 missions altogether dropping food. I was on 3 of them.
Now, your other combat missions were any of those?
Oh yeah, one of them was kind of rough into the Ruhr Valley. We flew into Germany and then all of a sudden made almost more than a 90-degree turn. And flew up the valley, the Ruhr Valley, trying to drop, to burst a dam in the Ruhr Valley. And the flak was very heavy. And in fact, as soon as we dropped the bombs, we made a left turn, and they just followed us around with the flak, but never hit us. But it was right in front of us, all the way around.
Were any of your crewmen injured or wounded on any of the flights?
Just that one crewman that jumped out of the plane as it was running down the runway. And he got panicky, and plane didn't stop, it was on fire. So in fact, he pushed the fellow out when the gun was out ahead of him. Now that fellow wasn't hurt at all. He must have just relaxed and tumbled. And then the other guy jumped out, and he was badly damaged, badly injured. Ended up in the hospital.
Now, what about your daily life at that point? The war was kind of winding down.
Yeah, but we didn't really know that.
Okay.
We didn't know that. Well, finally heard Hitler. We heard that Hitler died, they played on the radio. We were getting German radio somehow through I think it was Ireland. Somehow they could get picked up the German radio, and they played some very sad music when Hitler died, and because we all cheered when we found out he died.
Now, what was it like when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt? Was that pretty sad? It must have been.
And I don't remember that. You know, I don't remember. I knew he died, and I knew he died. No, I didn't. No, I didn't remember.
That was in April, I believe, a month
Probably
before.
So, yeah, okay. Was it in April? I don't remember that.
Yeah. And of course, the war ended in May in Europe.
May in Europe.
Was there a lot of celebration going on at that point?
Well, not in our base. We were very quiet, but some of the bases they were burning. We were on the farm. We were out in farm country, and they had stacks of hay, and they were igniting the stacks of hay, and they had. But it was very quiet in our base. I think they shut up some flares. I remember that, but that's about it.
What did you do during your time off?
Well, we had a pretty nice time. We used to have bicycles, and we used to ride in the country, and England was beautiful, you know, churchyards, just like I remember from my English history book, history book, pictures of the churches and country churches, and then we went to London once, and Piccadilly, and very dark.
Must have been a lot of fun, huh?
Well, it wasn't. There were girls all around, but you know, we didn't bother with them. There were prostitutes working in the Piccadilly Commandos, we called them.
Now, what about the people around your base? How did you get along with the English population?
Well, we were right next to a farm. There was a hedgerow, and then the farm was behind us. A little boy used to come over to visit us from the farm, and then his mother used to do our laundry. He'd pick up our laundry and bring it back, and back and forth. We'd pay them, and that's all I had to do with the civilians. Except when we went into town and bought bicycles in town.
Did you get to see any USO shows or any celebrities?
No, but when I was in training, I saw Bob Hope down at Gulfport when I was trained to be a mechanic, and Charlie Ruggles. I talked to him. I don't know if you remember him, but he was a famous actor. But he was an older man, and he had such heavy makeup. He looked like had a clay face. I was right next to him. But of course, he was a big movie star. I got his autograph.
Now, when did they send you home?
Well, the war was ended. We were waiting. We were going to talk. Rumors were we were going to retrain to go to Japan.
I was going to ask you about that.
No, there were rumors that we were going to stay in Army of Occupation. Finally, I guess it was June or July. I think it was June, the end of June. We flew home the same way we came over, by way of Iceland, Greenland, Labrador.
You didn't take that same airplane back home?
No, we saw it laying there in Scotland.
And so you came home, you got to leave.
Got to leave. And
how long had it been since you'd seen your family?
Well, I had seen them before I left overseas, so it was only about 6 or 7 months, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't very long.
Yeah. Now, were you discharged at that point?
Well, no. Well, we went to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and it was a redistribution center, and they were talking about retraining us and sending us over to Japan. But on the way out, we were just in Chicago. The troop train was passing in Chicago, and it stopped. And some of the guys left the plane and picked up the train and picked up the newspaper, and it said the A-bomb was dropped. We didn't know what an A-bomb was. So And then we found out that, you know, they had dropped the bomb, and then shortly after that, I guess, by the time we got to Sioux Falls, they had dropped the second bomb. And they didn't know what to do with us, actually. I got right out after that. They just sent us home. So I got home in 45, around July, I guess, of 45, or August, just in time to...
Let's see, the war ended in August of 45, so
Okay,
you probably got home in September, maybe?
Just before college started. I just got in, I got home about a week before college started, and I was able to, I had a half year of college before I went in. So I was able to pick it up in September right away and start all over again.
So you took advantage of the GI Bill.
Oh yeah, yes, I did. Yeah.
Did you join any veterans organizations at all?
Not then, but I did later on. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, I am a member of that.
How long have you been a member of the 8th Air Force Historic Society?
Only about 3 years, I guess. My youngest son is in the Air Force. He's a major in the Air Force. He's got 2 more years to go. He's got to retire. And he said, "Dad, why don't you get involved?" You know, I don't know. I raised a family, 6 kids. I was involved with raising a family, not with the. Because they were going to call me back into Korea.
Oh.
But I was working for General Foods. After I finished college, I became a food scientist. I had a degree in chemistry, worked for General Foods, and they wanted to call me back to Korea, and I told General Foods about it. They said, "Well, we'll write a letter." They wrote a letter, said I was involved in civilian food distribution, and they got me out.
Yeah. Now, when you were discharged, what rank were you?
Second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant.
Yeah, right.
All right. And have you maintained contact with some of the people you were in the service with?
A couple of years ago I did, yes. There were 4 bombardiers down in Tampa, Florida when we were training. Got to be very close friends. We partied around, went to a lot of places, went up to St. Petersburg, and I lost track of them. They went overseas before I did. As I said, I was held back, and my crew left me behind. I picked up a new crew, so I lost contact with them. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I picked up contact with them again. And since that time, I think 2 of them died. In fact, I found out about 3 years ago that my whole crew is gone.
No.
Nobody's left. They all passed away.
Now, speaking of crew, you've got that photo. If you can hold that up, he can zoom right.
Can you see that?
Now, do you want to point yourself out?
Yeah, well, where am I? I'm over here. No, where am I?
Okay,
I'm right there. I'm the little guy over here.
Okay. How do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
A great deal. I went in as a kid, a teenager. Came out feeling like I was a big shot now. I had much more experience, more grown up. You know, went off to college and finished college.
Do you think you would have gone on to college and finished?
Oh yeah, well, I was in college to begin with.
Okay.
I had a half year of college, and then they called me up, and I went in.
How was that GI Bill? I mean, was what they gave you, was it
great.
adequate?
I mean, you know, my brother and sister both went to night school to get their college, and I got it handed to me, and it was great. It was a great deal for us.
And when did you get married?
In '52, I met my wife in General Foods. She was the librarian in the lab where I worked. I worked in the lab, and I got friendly with her.
Obviously.
Yeah, right. She just passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
2 months ago.
And you had 6 children.
6 children.
How many grandchildren?
I've got 6 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild, grandson.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your
Okay,
interview.
Thank you. Appreciate it.